please welcome to the stage Bertelsmann Chief Data Officer Rhys Noelke and Runway Senior Deployment Strategist Anne-Isabel de Boquet.
Hi everyone. Do you recognize this voice? It's only been speaking to you throughout the day from the ceiling, and now I'm very happy to actually be looking at you at the same time. Even happier to be joined by Rhys Noelke. Rhys Noelke is the Chief Data Officer at Bertelsmann. He's actually spent his entire career at Bertelsmann and has really brought it to amazing new heights. He's been working across Bertelsmann global media, services, and education businesses, first in digital content in RTL Germany, and then later heading strategy and business development for the entire RTL group. And in this current role, he's now overseeing tech for all Bertelsmann entities, as well as the recently founded AI Hub, and he is also Vice Chairman of IAB Europe. So thank you very much, Rhys Noelke, for being with us.
Thank you.
So for those less familiar, I said Bertelsmann about 5 times in my intro there. What is Bertelsmann? Can you talk to us a little bit about the different entities and groups you've got?
Well, I hope I can shed a little light on that, because Bertelsmann obviously is a conglomerate. It's a family-owned business for over 180 years, if I'm not mistaken, and it's really centered around creativity at one part, but you may know companies like Fremantle that are producing American Idol or America's Got Talent, but also highly acclaimed drama. We've got Penguin Random House, one of the largest book publishers in the world, in our portfolio. But looking through, let's say, music and catalogs of BMG, we continue in marketing, education, with Rhys and our education group, but also logistics and things that really play into a theme that I like to call multimodal. I think no company is so multimodal as Bertelsmann as such. When you look at text, imagery, audio, video, etc. So, even robotics actually come into play in our supply chain business at Avato. So it's vast. It's pretty crazy, to be honest.
So kind of a perfect fit for the multimodal AI, multimodal business, multimodal AI. So talk to me about that. We've talked about a lot of very specific use cases today and people kind of trying to fix one problem for one industry maybe. But you mentioned you've got the books, you've got music, you've got film, robotics. When did AI first come across your desk, and how have you thought about adapting it for each of these different industries?
Well, it really depends on who you ask in the organization. For some, it may only be with the rise of ChatGPT that AI became relevant. But I think for us in the tech and data, but also in my history working for our broadcaster RTL, which is one of the largest European media groups there, we were looking at AI and machine learning topics, specifically in the ed tech world already 2013, 2015, where the whole automation and programmatic advertising came to light. So, things that seem like it's not really AI, and it is partly AI and automation processes as such. I mean, this is what we're confronted at the moment, actually every day, right? How much of this discussion we are having here is really AI versus it's actually a process we're looking at and trying to reimagine.
Okay, so you talked about kind of like 2013, 2015, how you were looking at it. I'm curious in these years how it's changed and how it's gone from we're exploring this, we're asking questions about AI, to we're actually deploying it across our services.
I think this is a really good point. And I was hearing so many sound bites this morning and during this whole day where, I think this wow moment, as one speaker said, I think it's slightly over. We called it a little bit the grassroots moment, when basically everybody was working on hundreds of different use cases and wow, wow, wow. And now a little bit the Woodstock moment is over, and I think Hannah said it nicely. We're getting comparably now grounded to what it was, and I think the partnerships that we did with Runway at the beginning and OpenAI and others really sort of, were part of actually getting more into the weeds and getting grounded on what really matters in creative processes and how to empower creatives generally. I think that is the mantra I really try to sort of bring across really from the beginning, because at the beginning there was a lot of hesitance in the creative industries, and companies like Runway, you really spearheaded it really from the get-go and trying to give people tools and sort of bring it actually in the creative agency world to life. And now we're obviously adopting it across our group at Fremantle, for instance, with our own AI studio called Imagine, where it's really about creating new IP and new ideas. And I think when we sort of talk about AI, sometimes I also feel there's a little bit of a hesitance to sort of just move away from the efficiency discussion over to the opportunity discussion.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the efficiency versus the opportunity. What is that conversation? What are people usually saying in that realm?
Well, when it comes to efficiency, I think we've probably, in every company, we've gone through this kind of analysis and, many consultants turning up our doors and trying to sort of explain the world to us on how we can reimagine business processes and the value chain, et cetera. I think where we are kind of now at is really sort of getting things done. And I think there's actually still, there's a lot of work actually now sort of in there, because that moment where you say, okay, that seems to be technical feasible is now actually building it organizationally as well as business-wise in a sensible way, because AI is also about, I think somebody said this, is all about investments, sort of, that's the AI kind of acronym when you sort of actually look at it. And I think there's a little bit of truth in there. Okay,
so I have two follow-up questions about that. When we talk about the investment and bring that, what's the gap now? Is it just time? Is it partnership? What is going to bring people really to that level of opportunity with AI?
We're trying to look at it more from, let's say, a strategic angle to say, okay, what's really important? So if you look at the value chains, et cetera, and the value pots that you actually want to sort of, look at, you need to slice it a little bit more into different sizable chunks. And I think the most important part where we feel is, where we've kind of called it swim lanes, where we want to sort of swim towards a goal, is for one, content generation and content understanding. These are sort of one or two, let's say, core pillars where I believe there's a lot of noise in the market, and you really need to slice it and say, okay, yeah, which model, which things. We're hearing it, and we can take solutions like Runway is actually perfectly putting them out there, but also saying, okay, how does it actually fit into a workflow? And I think probably as agentic was the one of those kind of don't say this again kind of word, probably workflows is going to be that kind of word next year. But we definitely need to look into these areas when also looking at other swim lanes when it's about content discovery and sort of also search where will brands actually be present in future, next to even sort of very operational stuff like software engineering and everybody's talking about Cloud Code and so on. I think that's where you need to orchestrate some of the discussions that we're having in all the various businesses a little bit and try to level it out and say, okay, what's really important here, what's really important there, and then sort of trickle it down.
Well, so it's very exciting to me to hear you really across a very large organization, across a lot of different territories. I don't know if it's important that everyone grasps this, that it's really very, very different structures in very different geographies, right? And that are really having to adapt this. And how are you doing this that maintains a Bertelsmann core, right? And that says we're doing this across the group? Or is it best to let every party kind of play on their own?
Well, that's the painful part of my job, I would say. I think it's more about actually identifying the real opportunities that are more the hidden gems or the hidden opportunities in, let's say, something. Most of my conversation is really with our businesses and divisions to really see, okay, I don't need to go into the trenches of trying to define what is happening business-wise or what's operationally happening. it would be ridiculous to try to do this from a corporate level. I think what we can actually achieve as a group, I call it sometimes a little bit the Cobra effect, is be on our toes to say, okay, that's something that nobody has done in that direction so far. Let's do this as a group and explore this, and that's what we actually do with the swim lane kind of approach, is actually to say, okay, what are the market dynamics? What can we learn from this? How can we share this? How we can collaborate on, we started our conversation here with the Runway team actually in a pilot where we said, okay, let's take 50 or 100 licenses. Let's test Runway in our group. Come back, report what's working, what's not working. And after 3 months, yeah, actually we did an enterprise agreement, fine. And that's the kind of way that I can work on a corporate level to say, I take away all that kind of painful stuff on the one side to say, okay, let's get the agreements in place, let's organize workshops, do it at a central point, because time and resources are limited on all sides, right? So I think that's a great way of having a two-way conversation with a partnership like ours.
I agree. I'm curious what you think is, what still needs to happen?
I don't know, it's already happening, I suppose. I was at GTC with the team from Richard, and I mean, the real-time part that also Anastasis will also talked about and will talk about is just something where I kind of got struck and said, okay, we had this moment 2013, 2014 when ad tech became programmatic. Split-second decision, nanoseconds decided on which ad placement is happening. Now think about this for creative businesses where we actually do film production, et cetera, in real time, as we heard from Kathleen. I mean, that kind of moments is definitely now happening. Compute is on tap, and it's basically everything is possible at some point. I think that really keeps me awake on the one side, but on the other side, I'm also relieved, and I think that showed the conversation also here today. Finally, we are back in a creator-related discussion. And it's really about the ideas, it's about the storytelling, it's about those kind of essential things. It's not about the technology. We can look at all the different models and say, cool, it now can actually do lighting, it can actually do color matching, great, yeah? It can even be agentic. But if you don't have the people that operate it and are able to do it, that's where actually the whole conversation starts on actually generating something that makes sense to an audience. And I think, yeah, that's maybe one part of the role of the of a media company, if you're not a platform, to actually say, what makes sense and resonates to an audience.
And how are you testing that with audiences? Or do you think that audience are seeing that part, or creative teams are seeing that?
I think, just a couple of examples, things that have not been imaginable. I was looking at some examples that we've been doing and testing with Runway, and I was, discussing with our marketing team at BMG. They're looking at, how to verticalize all the different videos for music, which is 16:9, and you can't just crop a video in vertical and hope that it'll muddle through, and sort of it doesn't make that kind of, it doesn't account for what the artist actually wanted to actually express. So some examples there actually sort of have shown me, it makes a lot of sense to be able to work with the whole tool set that Runway provides, and others obviously in some other shape and form too. But also Fremantle working on some of the shows. I think we're producing in Sweden, something like The Masked Singer that you obviously also know. And they were sort of just creating snippets and sort of things of that figure, as a kind of a pharaoh or sphinx kind of figure. And they were sort of building something that was kind of not imaginable, and actually sort of doing a little bit of a sketch or sort of an intro video with these figures. And that's kind of a great way of actually enhancing a show. You're not touching the core of the IP, and you're basically elevating it up onto a new level of production value. That is great for making a show entertaining.
So really immersive storytelling, really being able to maintain more of the initial creative direction, the initial pixels that people designed. So that seems like a very strong argument as a creator. That's something that I would want to have, right, to have that maintained. If you have advice for other chief data officers, other chief technology officers who are bringing this kind of technology in and who are having these conversations with their creatives or with their teams, what advice do you have for integration?
Well, that's a big question, and I'd rather have that conversation on a one-to-one basis, because I think you have to be careful with this sort of general advice. I'm seeing now at the moment that there's now this actual moment of doing. You know, it's the conversations and the deliberations are a little bit over. Let's get to work. Let's get our hands dirty. Let's also try things out. And some of the discussions can get very complex, and you can complexify things. And I don't want to get into this headache, and I can only make at least, you know, life of many of you maybe a little easier to say, you know, just do, and maybe sometimes ask for forgiveness later.
That's good advice. And if you need more advice, you had Rhys, you can go find him afterwards, and he'll have a one-on-one. Has there been anything that's been particularly surprising? I know we talked about the wow moment of real-time generation and that being something that you guys are exploring, but anything that you didn't expect?
Well, I think the dynamics in the market at the moment, I mean, you're opening your newsletter and emails basically on a daily basis, and you say, really? I had no idea this is going to happen, and how the market is moving. I think we'll just have to put our skates on and sort of, you know, keep afloat on some of those, let's say, mega trends that are happening on the one side, and also probably areas where things will actually move in different dimensions as we had expected. So yeah, I think it's, you know, it's definitely not going to get boring here, right?
Thank God it won't. That's a really good thing. And on the last question, just I'm curious, you know, you guys obviously work here, you're working in Europe as well, whether you have a sense of how that landscape differs a little bit, especially on the technology side and especially in the adoption of these tools and the production therewith.
Sure. I mean, you know, 2 years ago, you know, you had hesitance on maybe some of the creative industry side. You know, when you talked about copyright, et cetera, there was a lot of, let's say, building up big walls, et cetera, against AI. I think this has become a little bit more, let's say, of a two-way conversation. It's still a long way to go, to be honest. And Europe has been sort of taking a very hard stance with the EU AI Act, et cetera. Which now, to be honest, you know, I'm also in charge of governance across our group, and we were really looking at how to manage governance on a daily and on an operational basis. And I think Richard had it somewhere on his slide saying, you know, governance needs to be included and integrated close to the workers, and I'm a really big fan of that, because otherwise you basically have a multi-stakeholder approach, which I am totally in favor of when it comes to governing AI. And actually taking regulation, like in Europe, actually on board. But nevertheless, it is, you know, you can also ride a dead horse there, it's sort of to trying to get this regulation over the line and actually comply with all ifs and buts and bobs sort of going there. I believe that Europe is actually now being a little bit more tamed towards this. The EU AI Act implementation has been prolonged a little bit, probably as it's sort of happening. And the European spirit there is also becoming more now adventurous and also more, let's say, risk-taking. But I would say, generally, you know, I was looking at a number there, you know, adoption rate of maybe even ChatGPT, you know, is, for instance, in Germany, very high. Germans like to be efficient, and so that's kind of you know, something where you say, okay, there's maybe a little bit of a let's say sort of a bias in that as well, you know, and sort of on the one side being on the brake, on the other side really sort of, you know, pushing the pedal down to sort of, you know, give it a go. And I think that's sometimes the Europeans are, let's say, maybe underestimated there. That once they've figured it out, they want to go.
They want to push. Nice. And just, I will ask one last piece of advice for the group, I'm sorry. But just in a large organization, in a space that changes so quickly from a technological, creative, legislative landscape, how are you dealing with that pace of change?
I really believe that collaboration is the key word in this whole game, and sharing and transparency on how we go about it is equally important internally as it is also externally vital in partnerships like Bertelsmann and Runway have entertained, and are sort of going to go to the next level, because I believe that only then, when you actually start working on projects, really looking at how do we actually go to that next level of the frontier and all the dynamics that are out there. And I just, you can be fascinated and stunned, but do nothing. No, we need to actually accelerate on doing things, and that's my biggest asset I have across a Bertelsmann group, because we've got so many different experts and different areas of expertise that we can definitely supercharge these developments together.
Well, thank you, Rhys. It's been great collaborating with you, and thank you for coming and joining us today. Thanks, everyone.